Please subscribe to our channel, Pacific Front Untold, and be sure to leave a comment after watching a video. The Hoten Mukden prisoner of war camp was located near Mukden, present-day Shenyang. It was situated on the city's outskirts, approximately 12 miles from Shenyang along Dunling Road. Today the site is home to the Shenyang World War II Allied Prisoners Camp Museum, which is one of the best preserved examples of an Allied POW camp from World War II. The Hoten Mukden prisoner of war camp was strategically situated near industrial facilities like the Mitsubishi factories involved in manufacturing airplane parts, coal and iron mines, and the South Manchurian Railway connecting Mukden to Harbin, which facilitated the transport of materials and goods. Established in October 1942, the camp housed over 2,000 Allied prisoners, primarily Americans, along with smaller contingents of British, Australian, New Zealand, and Dutch soldiers captured during campaigns in Southeast Asia and the Pacific. Some notable prisoners held at the camp were the former British governor of Hong Kong, Sir Mark Atchison Young, the U.S. General Jonathan Wainwright, who surrendered all U.S. forces in the Philippines, and British Lieutenant General Sir Arthur Percival, who surrendered Singapore to Japan. These high-profile prisoners were kept separately from the other prisoners and often received better treatment. Most POWs arrived at the camp in poor condition due to being transported from Malaysia or from the Philippines to Manchuria. Many POWs arrived at the camp after grueling journeys on the infamous hell ships, which were unmarked Japanese transport vessels notorious for overcrowding, poor sanitation, and which frequently fell under attack by Allied forces. Many of the prisoners were captured in the Philippines and Malaya after enduring brutal conditions during their transfer across the Pacific and into Manchuria. The prisoners arrived in Mukden on November 11, 1942, but were held in a temporary camp near Fentgai until July 29, 1943, when the main camp was completed. In the first winter at the temporary camp, hundreds of POWs died due to weakness and exposure to the cold. The main Mukden camp consisted of 3 two-story brick barracks with tile roofs similar to the industrial buildings nearby. Other structures included a hospital, staffed by Australian POW doctors and Japanese medical personnel. It had a tuberculosis ward, isolation rooms, X-ray facilities, and a morgue. A bathhouse with 22 showers and 3 concrete pools, 2 cold and 1 hot, which was supplied by water piped from a nearby heating plant. Latrines with basic pit toilets attached to the barracks that were cleaned weekly. A mess hall for food preparation with meals carried to the barracks in buckets. Workshops that employed around 950 POWs and Chinese laborers that produced airplane parts, tools, and carpentry goods. Additionally, a water tower, storage rooms, guard towers, and electrified fencing were also part of the camp. The entire facility was surrounded by 4 brick walls about 8 feet high, with electrified wire coiled on the top. At each corner of the walls, there were guard towers staffed by soldiers around the clock. The barracks had wooden floors as well as bunk beds and straw mattresses that 6 to 7 men shared. The officers were separated from the enlisted men and generally received better treatment. The barracks had a series of ovens that were used for both cooking and heating, but the ovens often struggled to keep the rooms warm. Coal was strictly rationed to around 1 bucket per day. The barracks contained electrical lighting, but to conserve power, the wattage was restricted to 10 watts per bulb, giving the area just enough light to walk around in, yet dark enough to make reading and writing impossible. All the rations and food cooked in the camp were also consumed in the barracks. The mess hall was used for the preparation of food and had little in the way of dining space, and the cooking was directed by Japanese supervisors and was completed by teams of POWs. The daily ration consisted of cornmeal porridge and a bun for dinner. During the warmer months, vegetables were grown in the camp garden. Once a month, an allotment of meat was given. In the winter, Rice replaced vegetables, but quantities were insufficient to maintain health. Private Wayne Miller recalled, "We couldn't eat the food, so some of the fellows took these ropes, made a loop out of them, then they took the food and put it in the loop, and as the dogs came along, they pulled on the other end and caught the dogs under the collar around the neck, and then pulled them to the door and beat them to death, and then that meat was eaten." Water was supplied from wells, but it was often contaminated and had to be boiled before consumption. Any excess foodstuffs were stored in a warehouse, but the Japanese were very careful not to let Allied POWs store food. Red Cross parcels were occasionally delivered, but were often delayed, tampered with, or pilfered. Canned goods were pierced upon arrival to prevent storage, forcing immediate consumption. The bathhouse was considered to be the POW's favorite building. It was not heated and thus extremely cold during the winter. In contrast, the latrines and washrooms were located in a small building attached to the end barracks and contained only holes in the ground. The condition of these holes was extremely unsanitary, with the work teams only cleaning them once a week. The hospital had the ability to support up to 150 patients at any given time, and contingents of doctors from the infamous Unit 731 also briefly served here in a medical capacity, although it is unclear if their role went beyond medical care. Inoculations against certain diseases were also provided to the POWs here, and the quality was comparable to a Japanese Army regional hospital. Contact with the outside world was very rare, and prisoner mail was seldom sent or accepted by the camp officials. 3 letters were permitted to be sent per year, but any return mail was thrown into a storehouse to rot. The Red Cross was at times permitted to visit, and certain Swiss officials were allowed into the camp to examine the premises at the behest of the United States. Parcels were rarely delivered, and prisoners had to purchase goods from the Japanese at the canteen, which restricted only the wealthy POWs to luxury items, like mosquito nets or tobacco. A single set of clothes was provided to each POW, and any replacements had to be bought. The clothing for sale was often captured British military dress. The camp workshop was staffed by about 950 POWs and included Chinese laborers from outside the camp. These Chinese laborers would fraternize with the POWs and give them news on the state of the war. The POWs who worked in the shop were also given more rations and permitted to take a break on Sundays. The workday lasted for 8 hours, and lunch was brought from the mess hall. Officers were not made to work, and instead helped with camp administration. The workshop was fairly mild by Japanese standards, and prisoners here were generally treated better than in other camps across the Japanese Empire. The Hoten Mukden Camp was regarded as a model facility and had better conditions than many other camps by Japanese standards. At this camp, there were many violations of the Geneva Convention, and hundreds still died within its walls. Physical punishment was endemic, with slapping and beatings occurring daily. Those who did not show proper deference to the rules, such as bowing to Japanese who passed by, were brutally beaten. 3 American escapees were executed publicly. When President Truman announced Japan's surrender on August 16, 1945, a team of 5 Office of Strategic Services operators and a Chinese interpreter parachuted into Mukden the next day, later known as Operation Cardinal. After collecting statements and documents from the camp, they tended to the POWs and handed the camp over to the advancing Soviet Army on August 20, 1945. At the time of the camp's capture by the Soviets, the storehouse had 3 months' worth of food and undelivered prisoner mail up to 2 years old. The POWs were given weapons and became guards over the camp garrison troops, reversing their roles. Today, the Hoten Mukden Museum site is a tourist attraction and a reminder of a tragic page in the history of the Second World War. To those who were held there, a look at the old brick walls and guard towers serves as a painful memory of their captivity.